Hello, my name is Allison Carmen, and welcome to my podcast, 10 Minutes to Less Suffering. Today, I want to speak to you about the idea that when someone says something to us, it doesn't mean that it's true. What I'm saying is when people say things to us, sometimes it's not true. In a sense, it's not reality, and sometimes it's not true for us. This comes up for me all the time in business. I remember when I opened up my own law practice, and I was negotiating a corporate agreement for my client. My client was a small company, and he was negotiating with a very large company. So the lawyer on the other side worked for a very large law firm, and he had a degree from Harvard Law. And as we were negotiating, there was a point that I felt very strongly about for my client, to protect my client. And as I started to negotiate the point, the Harvard lawyer said to me, "Well, no one's ever brought up that point before, and no one's ever had a problem with that before." And my quick response was, there's always a first time for everything. But I remember when I got off the phone, I was extremely doubtful about my position. And it wasn't that I didn't think my client needed protection, but a Harvard lawyer told me that my point wasn't valid. This happens to a lot of us when someone that we think has more authority or more wisdom or better degrees confronts us, tells us that we're wrong. Now, of course, I didn't back down, and I won the point, and it protected my client. But I did spend a lot of time thinking about, well, if this person says it, is it true? And it comes up in relationships as well. I had a client whose husband recently left her. And after he left, he wrote her a text 2 weeks later. And he said, "I left you because of how you treated me, and for no other reason." Now, her husband wanted to go on to have other relationships with other women, but that's what he said his reason was. And my client would call me up crying all the time that she was so devoted. She took care of the children. She cooked food. She spent all her time with him. And all she kept saying again and again is, "What did I do? What did I do?" And I do think it's important that we reflect on our actions in any situation, because often many of us play a role, even if it's small, of the things that happen. But finally, I said to her one day, just because he said it doesn't make it true. And I'm not saying I said the most brilliant thing in the world to her, but it was the right time. And then I said to her, "What's true for you?" And what was true for her is that she did her best. And she was loving and she was kind. And him leaving was really about him. It was him wanting another life. And as painful as it was for her, not believing all his words to be true allowed her to move forward and to heal. And there's nothing wrong with going through a doubt process. Is what this person's saying to me real? Is what I'm feeling real? But often a lot of us just believe what we're told. And the biggest problem with that is that it doesn't allow us to find our own truth and make our decisions on the facts and the feelings that align with our path and what we want to do in our life. For me, I guess that's why I love business so much, because I always say numbers don't lie. So for me, I love to look at a client's financial statement or a bank statement or a balance sheet, because the numbers always tell a story. So unless someone has stole money or embezzled money, what you see is the truth. Now, what you're going to do with that, with those numbers, and how you're going to plan, well, that's up to the particular business owner and the people that are involved with the business. But I find it very grounding and anchoring to be with that truth. But we don't always have a financial statement or a balance sheet for our lives and for our opinions and for our feelings. So how do we do this? How do we manage what other people say to us? And how do we manage what's true and what's not true? And the most important thing any of us can do is to stay centered. Because what happens is, if we're not centered within ourselves, we're going to be very swayed with what other people tell us. And this can happen at work. We could have a coworker who's acting against us. And in a relationship, we could have someone telling us we're wrong all the time when we've done nothing wrong. So whether we believe the outside world or not depends on our relationship in our inside world. And also, it's not like we're always going to have the answers, because sometimes people will be talking about a truth and the answer hasn't arrived yet. And sometimes we need to wait. But whether we need to wait, whether the other person's right, or we need to connect with our inner truth, the only way we're going to do that is if we have a center within ourselves. And that's why it's so important to have some kind of practice in your life where you can center yourself. Whether you're able to do it through breathing, whether you're able to meditation or yoga or working out or walks, but something to clear the outside world out of your mind. And sometimes when I say center yourself, I actually could feel the center right in the center of my chest. That's always where I feel for some reason my center is. And you might feel it in your gut, you might feel it in your throat, but there's a place within you that you could center the energy and really feel balanced and centered. And the second thing you need to remember is that nobody in the world has more value than you. Sometimes we think someone's more valuable or more important or wiser, and that's not true. Yes, there are people who are experts, and we could go to them for advice, but we need to lead the way in what we want and what we think. And remind yourself to say, just because someone else said it doesn't mean it's true. Just because someone thinks you're heavy or not good looking or not smart or doesn't give you the job, whatever it is, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. And that's what happens. That's why we believe what other people say, because we think they know more than we do. And again, yes, there are experts sometimes, but you'll know if you center yourself and you love yourself and you respect yourself and you value yourself, you will know when someone says something to you, whether it feels right or not. Sometimes you know it intellectually. Well, I know those facts aren't true because of an experience I had. I know those facts aren't true because I read a study. But often, you know it's not true because it doesn't align. It doesn't feel right. And this is such an important thing for all of us to get as we go on Facebook and Instagram and read news articles. We have to be really careful with the information that we take in. Because remember, it doesn't mean that it's true. There are certain things that we need to collect information for to know what's true and what's not. But often our day-to-day, what people say about us and about our lives and our choices and what we do and what we don't do, just because someone says it doesn't mean it's true. So whether it's business or it's your private relationship or it's with your children or it's someone talking about your children, the only way to get clarity is to take a step back. And it's not thinking, oh, that person's wrong. I know they're wrong. You can consider what people say. That's important. I'm going to consider what that person says to me. I'm going to think maybe that person's telling me the truth, but I'm going to go back to my center. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to make sure I'm feeling okay about myself, and then I'm going to take another look at the situation. So it's really about our own wholeness and our own self-love that's going to allow us to see what we believe is true in this lifetime. And like I said before, sometimes there's no answer. And sometimes, in the end, people have two different opinions, and no one's right and no one's wrong. It's just literally what works for you. Everyone could tell you not to pass up that job. It's the best job in the world. But just because they say it doesn't make it true. What's best for you? Someone could tell you, oh, that guy, you should go out with him. If you don't like him, you shouldn't go out with him. Someone should tell you to wear that dress or buy those shoes or you should live there. Just because they say it doesn't mean it's true. The only way you're going to have a happy and beautiful, authentic life is when you believe in yourself. And we're not always going to know the right answer, and we're going to have doubt, of course. And sometimes people are going to give us really great advice. But sometimes just because they say it doesn't mean it's true. So it's a balance that we have to figure out. Because I have so many people come to me believing things that were never true. Things their parents said to them when they were young. Things their bosses said to them. Things their spouses said to them. And without a sense of yourself, what everybody says is going to be true for you. And then what happens is you lose your sense of self. You become very unhappy. And you look around and the life you want is not quite there. You could also go back to my podcast on self-love, because the closer you get to your center and the more you love yourself and the more you get to know yourself, you'll know your own truth. And then when someone says something to you, you'll know how to react. You'll know what to do to live your best life. Thank you for listening to this podcast today. If you'd like to get in touch with me, you could email me at allison@allisoncarmen.com. If you'd like to buy my book, The Gift of Maybe, it's available at all major bookstores and online retailers. And if you like this podcast, you could subscribe on iTunes and leave a comment.